So let's talk about evergreens. Why do we even have evergreens, right? Evergreens were cut and brought indoors to symbolize life, rebirth, and renewal. How appropriate. They were thought to have power over death because their green never faded, and they were used to defeat or hold back death and destruction. Because of their strength and tenacity, they were also believed to encourage the sun's return. Now can you see the solstice? And that's the earthly kind of pagan understanding, the cosmological. What is a Yule tree? Now you got the evergreens. That's another important pagan symbol. The Yule tree was also another important symbol in pagan traditions. Originally, it represented the tree of life, or the world tree among early pagans. In ancient times, it was decorated with gifts people wanted to receive from the gods. It was adorned with natural ornaments such as pine cones, berries, and other fruit, as well as symbols sacred to the gods and goddesses. In some holiday traditions, garlands of popcorn and berries were strung around the tree so that visiting birds could feed off the tree as well. Now let's start to see where that connection takes place with Christianity. These are really interesting myths, legends. Among the many accounts claiming to explain the origin of the Christmas tree, the three most popular are from Germany, making it the likeliest place of origin. These stories span from the 8th to the 16th century, and all three are rooted in historical fact and may even be connected one to the other. The first story is about Saint Boniface, whose birth name was Winifred. In the 8th century, he was a missionary to some of the remotest tribes of Germany. He is probably best known for what is called the felling of Thor's oak. It is said that upon entering a town in the northern Hesse, Boniface learned that the people worshiped the god Thor. They believed that Thor resided in a great oak tree among them. Boniface determined that if he wanted to earn the audience with the people, he would have to confront Thor. He announced before the people that he was going to cut down the oak, and he openly challenged Thor to strike him down. Miraculously, as Boniface began to chop the oak, a mighty wind blew and hurled the tree to the ground. Tradition holds that a fir tree was growing in the roots of the oak, and Boniface claimed the tree as a symbol of Christ. Needless to say, the people readily accepted Boniface's message, converting right there on the spot, right? And the tree would serve as a reminder of the mighty God who was humbly born into the world as a man on Christmas Day. Isn't that beautiful? So you start to incorporate, and I'm just showing that we're adding all these beautiful traditions together. So as we do them, we want to know the significance and add that thought, that frequency, that understanding, and it makes it even more special. Now watch another legend. Another possible source of the Christmas tree comes from medieval religious plays in Germany. Among the most popular of these plays was the Paradise play. It started with the creation of man when they acted out the first sin and showed Adam and Eve being expelled from paradise, the Garden of Eden. It closed with the promise of a coming Savior, which made the play a particular favorite during Christmas season. In the play, the Garden of Eden was most often represented by a fir tree hung with apples, remember, because it's creation, the Garden of Eden, the apples, right? And surrounded by candles. At one point, religious plays were suppressed in Germany, and the popular symbol of the Paradise play made its way into the homes of Christians. By the 15th century, Christians started to decorate their trees not only with apples, remember, because that's the tree of good and evil, the symbol of sin and the need for a savior, but with small white wafers, the symbol of Christ's body, the Savior. These wafers were later replaced by little pieces of pastry cut in the shape of stars, angels, and bells. Now do you start to understand even why they're putting stars on the Christmas tree? But I wanted to tell you my interpretation, since we're on it right here, and it is Christmas, and we're talking about paradise and getting expelled. In Genesis, it speaks of, Adam and Eve taking the fruit of the tree of good and evil. Wanted to remind you that there's two trees in Genesis. Most people don't know that. One of the trees is the tree of immortality. The other one was the tree of the forbidden fruit, that if you take a taste of it, you taste good and evil and become like gods. Remember, that's how the serpent tempted Eve. It dawned on me that the entire thing could be a metaphor. So in my moment of insight, I just want to share with you my interpretation, and it brings it even more significantly into focus. And many of you know I've had a near-death experience, so I've been on the other side. We're all light consciousness, right? Our consciousness is so totally expanded, and we can come in and go anywhere. And you talk about many mansions, it's many dimensions for eternity. So on the other side, our consciousness is totally expanded, and it's light. If we choose and we look at Earth, Earth is the apple. If we choose to take our light and to take on form and come into a human body, at that moment in time, it is our choice to come into Earth, take on physical form, taste of the fruit of good and evil, because in an earthly body on Earth, I challenge you, have you not tasted good on this planet? When I birthed my babies, I can't tell you, that is paradise. When you love someone so unbelievably beautifully and unconditionally, that's paradise. But have we not then tasted evil? That was the choice that I think the Bible was speaking of. That we choose to come to Earth, to take on fleshly form, come to this planet, go through the trials and tribulations and the many good and the many bad. And that's when I turned around and said, of course, I've tasted good and I've tasted evil down here. Earth is the apple. It's our choice to come as light beings, to come through this school ground of Earth and to taste good and evil and to touch everyone in the most beautiful way imaginable and learn our lessons and grow more beautifully in the light so that we can acquire that godlike knowledge, acquire all the virtues, shake off all the non-virtues, and become beautiful living beings of light. And so we're sparks of the divine. So that was my understanding that came to me about the whole Genesis creation in the tree, and I wanted to just interject that, and I hope you like mine. Now, what was the other connection with this beautiful Christmas tree and the Christians? The connection between the Garden of Eden, paradise, and Christmas is profound. The first sin in the Garden of Eden was eaten from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, wanting to be like God. This is the traditional version. I gave you my interpreted version. How did God address the sin? God became a man that we might be saved. And the trees play a significant role in the entirety of the Christian story. For the temptation that brought sin into the world hung on a tree, the forbidden fruit, and the act that resulted in salvation from sin, Christ on the cross, hung on a tree. Furthermore, once sin entered the world in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve and all mankind were no longer permitted to eat of the tree of life. So that's how the traditional version of that goes, which is why I gave you mine first. A third tradition about the origin of the Christmas tree attributes it to Martin Luther, the leader of the Reformation. Some say that on Christmas Eve, and I love this, was from East Germany, and she told me this herself, so this wasn't even just in a book, but I can verify it. Luther was walking through the woods near his home. He was struck by the beauty of how the snow shimmered in the moonlight on the branches of the tree. And in an effort to recreate the magnificent sight for his family, he cut down the tree and placed it in his home and decorated it with candles. So now you can start to see why you cut the tree and bring it in. Also the significance of the evergreen tree and the beauty of this. So we're just adding all these many different meanings.